before the show starts. So now we have to do this to start every show. Welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Edward. He is Mark Messina. And joining us today, one of our own, Jerry Frear. Jerry, NCPA Media. He's here. He's going to talk to us about the Pittsburgh Marathon that he just completed, what he learned from the experience. And we're going to convince him to tell us whether he's crazy enough to do another. Maybe we can bribe him. Maybe he doesn't need to be bribed. We're going to find out today with Jerry. Jerry, we start every show off with the same question. Don't get too enthused. Mark, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling better than the guy that ran the marathon. I can tell you, I can answer one of the questions. What did he learn from it is apparently nothing, as you're about to find out. And I really had this idea for today. I have a New York Mets jersey, which doesn't really make sense because I'm a Yankee fan or whatever. But to make the 30-second story, when you're on a Little League team, like sometimes your sponsors is like a national corporation that has colors. You know, like State Farm would be red and white. But then you get local mom and pop businesses that don't really have like corporate colors. So then they just mix and match throughout the league so teams have different colors. And we had one of those, and I was going to be the manager of this team. And our league president, who is Scott Metzger, one of the county commissioners, is a Mets fan, and he knows I'm a Yankee fan, so he intentionally made my team Mets colors. So I was like, well, if my kid's going to wear Mets colors for 2 years, and who's my favorite Met? And I'm going to buy a jersey. And if you're from Jerry and I's era, is somewhere on your favorite Met list is Dwight Gooden. And that's who I got. I was shocked. He's like one of the great players that time has forgotten. And I had so many kids ask me, like, who is Dwight Gooden? So I have a Dwight Gooden jersey. And after last night, not because the Mets rallied to score 7 in the 9th. I wouldn't wear it because of that. It's because they did it against the Phillies. And just to antagonize all the Phillies fans, I was going to bring my Mets jersey. I forgot. It's sitting home.
You two ago, was he the Doc?
Yes.
Was he referred to as Doc? Okay.
Doc Gooden, yes.
All right.
When you pull up his numbers, which you should do today sometime, he had 2 years that was like out of this world, and he was like 19 and 20. Like he's 19 years old, striking out 275 big league hitters. Like at a lot of schools around, Loyal Sock being one of them. The really good 19-year-olds are still in high school. He was 19 years old, and he's the best pitcher on the planet. And so anyway, I was going to just to antagonize Philly fans, because if they didn't notice it, they gave up a touchdown in the 9th inning and lost. And as in my group chat with my buddies from college, because it was flying around, because I went to school with Mets fans and Phillies fans, I said, what's the big deal? They gave up a touchdown late. It happens all the time. It doesn't often happen in May, but losing on a touchdown late happens all the time.
It does. I felt bad for Mets fans. Or I'm sorry, for Phillies fans last.
I feel bad for Phillies fans a lot.
Jerry, believe this or not, you have not gotten to say a word yet. We're 3 minutes in, and you would be shocked. That is not the record.
You are the special guest. Yes, we'll get to you. You just wait.
There have been people that have made it to the 5-minute mark without getting to say a word on this show. Jerry, how are you feeling? How's the recovery going? We'll start there.
I'd say 90% right now. I've got some soreness, and for any runners out there, my toes are killing me, so they can all.
So that was the worst. That. Toes are the worst.
Toes were the worst. I mean, my quad. I wasn't prepared for my quads to be as tight and as painful as they were. But I think that happened because of not just the fact that the second half of the Pittsburgh Marathon has some hills in it, but it was the trying to stay controlled in your running because of all the rain and the wet road and all of that. So I never really got to stretch. You know, my stride never got really long. It was very, very short and kind of shuffly, and trying to stay controlled like that really my quads took a.
And let's be honest, in real life, your quads and your thighs are much like Emmitt Smith, like just like that big.
I was about to say, before we get lost in the chaos of the show, let's just start here.
He ran a marathon. We're starting with chaos.
Why the marathon? Go back to it. Where did the idea for the marathon come up? Maybe why the Pittsburgh Marathon? Just kind of the origins of doing the marathon, because you don't wake up every morning and decide, especially if you're not someone that like was a college runner or somebody who has been a runner for their whole life. where did the idea of running a marathon come from?
That's how Jeff asked the question. My version would have been, what the hell is wrong with you?
So anybody who knows me knows that most things in my life, there's a story behind everything. And there's a story behind this. I would say that running a marathon has always been on my bucket list. So it's always been something that I wanted to do. And what I used to say is I wanted to run Steamtown because I've always heard that it's a scenic one and it's an easy one to run. So that was kind of my long-term goal. And I ran a little bit in 2019. I ran my first 5K. My daughter Phoebe, who had run a marathon, and I'd started running a little bit with her. And we have an organization here in the region called Dwell, and Dwell has a 5K in the fall. And I decided I was going to run the Dwell 5K. And I trained a little bit. I ran a little bit, but I didn't train super hard because I didn't really know what I was doing. And I ran that race in honor of a friend of mine that I went to school with, Dan Wolmer, who was a marathoner and an ultra marathoner and constantly posting and raising money doing that. And 6 years ago got lupus and wasn't able to run anymore, got it really bad. And so I ran the 2019 Dwell 5K, sort of in his honor. And that was kind of that. Phoebe ran a marathon in 2019. She ran Wineglass. And I thought that was kind of cool. She completed a race. And so it started to be in the back of my mind that maybe running a marathon was closer than, a 10-year opportunity on a bucket list. So that was kind of where the idea started. Where the reality of this came into play was last July, as a health thing and as a mental health thing, I started walking, and I started walking a lot. And it started off, a couple miles, and then it was 4 miles, and then it was 6 miles. And one Sunday morning in August, I decided I was going to walk from my house to Walmart and back again, which was like 8.5 miles. And
you live in Williamsport.
Yeah, I live in Williamsport. And I got about 5 miles in, and I had to text Mark, of all people, and say, "Are you awake? And do you have any water? Like, can you meet me alongside the road with water?" Because I really hadn't thought that whole it's 8 miles. Like, I hadn't really thought it all through, that I probably should have had some water with me. And he tracked me down on the side of the road, brought me some water, and that was kind of the start. That day was kind of the start.
He was still vertical on the side.
Yeah,
It wasn't like he was horizontal and I was Gunga Din pouring it in his mouth.
Yeah.
But it was.
But and Mark won't tell you this. He was a little bit concerned. He was slightly concerned for my health and my sanity at that point in time. But that kind of started the longer walks. By September, I was walking 10 miles. Probably the beginning of October, I walked my first half marathon. And I think the day that I walked the half marathon was probably the day that I started to think about marathons. And what I did was I looked up walkable marathons, and there's not a ton of them across the country. Marathons are typically set up for runners. They're not set up for walkers. Typically speaking, they have a 6 or 6.5 hour time limit. But I found a couple that were about a half dozen or a dozen that were, and one of them was the Tulsa, Oklahoma Marathon. My brother-in-law lives in Tulsa. So it kind of made it an easy decision to I'm going to go do Tulsa. They had an 8-hour time limit. I knew I wouldn't have to run or anything. I could walk and do Tulsa. And so Tulsa was scheduled for Easter Sunday. And so that had been the plan. We'd go out to Tulsa, see my wife's brother. I'd walk the Tulsa Marathon, and we'd come home. Well, the early part of this year, the economy started to get all wonky, and cost to go out just kind of started to skyrocket a little bit, and sort of put it kind of out of reach. And so the second week of March, we talked to her brother and told her we weren't coming out. And that was kind of the end of it. And I really didn't think anything more about it, except for the very next day on Facebook, Dan Woolmer posted that his comeback race was going to be the Pittsburgh Marathon. And Dan, who lives in Houston, Texas, had said that if I walked Tulsa, he would come up and see me at the finish line. So I was like, well, Dan's gonna do the half at Pittsburgh. I might as well run. Well, I'll do Pittsburgh. I'll do the Pittsburgh Marathon. And without thinking about it, I registered. Like I went from his post to, yes, I'm going to do Pittsburgh, to registering for Pittsburgh. And then I made the biggest mistake of my life. And I YouTubed the Pittsburgh course and watched a video of the driving course of the Pittsburgh Marathon, and quickly determined that in 7 hours, there was no way I was going to walk it. And I messaged my coach and I said, hey coach, it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to walk Pittsburgh. What do I do? She said, start walk running. And so
I need to interrupt.
Yes.
Who the hell needs a walking coach?
She was a running coach and she,
but you weren't running yet. You were just walking.
But I knew where to go for information. Like I have a guy. In this case, I have a woman who is capable.
A walking coach.
Yeah.
We need a guy for everything.
Yeah.
Real quick, because we want to address the story. Tastes Like Good said, every time I'm here, it was on my bucket list. I'm reminded how different everyone's bucket is.
That's a good one.
I just like to say before we get back to the rest of your story, Jeff, you have run a marathon.
I did the Brotherly Love Run in Philadelphia.
As he just said, Phoebe has run a marathon. Julie, our new weekend editor, has run a marathon. So it is, when I am sitting in a room with just you two, and as we are now, I realize that I am not the smartest person in the room. But when I'm sitting in a room with you guys, I realize I'm the most sensible person in the room. Because as history always reminds us, the first person that ran a marathon delivered a message and then dropped dead. So why anyone would do this voluntarily is you need to adjust your bucket list to something less painful.
I did it for a girl.
You did, yes, which is
I'm not saying that
worse.
makes me smarter. I'm just saying
My girlfriend was right. And that is your, like, Jeff, why'd you do it? Well, I was dating this girl. She was a runner. She wanted to run it. I said, okay, honey. So, yeah, I'm not sure that helps your argument.
I was being supportive.
Were you?
I think so.
Were you?
Well, maybe I wasn't.
So, anyway, and I do, as he mentioned the story about me bringing water, and I think it was because it was early. It was in the morning, and the conversation was, are you out of bed? So right away, I'm like, if he's calling me, he's not like a little thirsty. He needs water. So I literally, like, I hop out of bed and I get there, but he gave the estimation of like, I'll meet you at the Green Bridge. Well, I got there much quicker than he thought I was going to get there.
You didn't walk.
So no, I did not walk, nor did I run. So I'm waiting for him, and there's no Jerry, and there's no Jerry. And now I'm in a little bit of panic mode that, like, is he horizontal? Like, is he gasping for his last breath a quarter mile down the bike path? And I should be running to him to save him. So there was a little bit of tension. It wasn't just like show up along there and hand it to him. Like, I got there and there was a moment of like, is he already dead? Am I too late?
And at this point, I was walking without carrying my wallet, without carrying any money on me. Like, at that point in August, I really didn't have any idea what I was doing except for out wandering around on my own.
Okay, now I take it all back. No wonder he needed a coach. He needed a coach. A coach is like, carry water.
So you reach out to the coach. So how would you describe what you did at Pittsburgh, man? Walk, run, jog. Like, how would you describe it?
Well, I ran the majority of the race. Which was surprising to me, because when I started 6 weeks ago, I was doing 3 miles at a time, and that was it. And up until the Saturday before Pittsburgh, I had never completely run from start to finish, even a 5K. That was my first. Montgomery, the Saturday before, was my first 5K where I actually ran the whole 5K all at once. No walking at all. So when I got to Pittsburgh, so I started running 6 weeks out, and I ran 5 weeks, and then I essentially took the week off before the race. But I built myself up from 3 miles to 6 to 8. And then I had long runs of 13, 20, and 13. And I made my long runs on Sunday. So my first long was an 8, and then a 10, and then a 13, a 20, and a 13. Was how I did it. So when I got to Pittsburgh, my goal at the starting line was to run the first 4 miles without doing any walking. And so that would be the green.
That course is easy.
in the upper left-hand corner. The course is fairly flat in the first 10.5 miles, which is the green and then the yellow. So we're going around this from left to right, and that was okay. I was really worried about the hills. I read a whole bunch of reviews, and everybody in the reviews said, A, Pittsburgh is a super hard marathon, and B, the second half with the hills is a killer. And again, I talked to my coach, and I'm like, Coach, like, what do I do? And she's like, well, you got to run hills. And I'm like, I'm having enough trouble just running on the flat. You want me to run hills? Where should I go? And she's like, just find a hill. So I'm brilliant enough to know, like, to get to Williamsport High School, you've got to go up a hill. So that was the first hill that I ran. And so for the first couple of weeks, I ran Williamsport High School. I'd go from my house to Williamsport High School up to the hill, and I'd come back down. And then it dawned on me, and I remembered that the original route for the Pi Day 5K here in Williamsport ran Valmont, and Valmont was a hill, and I hated that. So I started running that. And then at the end of Valmont is Ravine Road, and you can run up to the home. And so that became part of my route. Little did I know at that point in time that I was running more elevation and higher hills than I was going to see in Pittsburgh.
So you overtrained
a little bit, but it was well worth it, and it made Pittsburgh not seem as bad as the reviews.
So here, I'll ask both you guys, since you guys are veteran runners. Jeff, you ran one, as you said, your first, your last, and your only.
That's what as I crossed the finish line, I looked the lady in the eye, and she goes, "Was this your first?" And I said, "Not only was it my first, it was my last and my only."
Did you break up with the girl right on the spot?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right. So when you go in, I assume in the first marathon, you're okay. Let me backtrack. For marathon runners, I'm guessing they go in with a time goal. When it's your first marathon, do you even have a time goal, or do you just want to finish?
Well, my goal was to finish, but I'm extremely competitive. I'm competitive with myself in every the thing. One of the things that I've learned since I've started running, right, is that it's like golf to me. Like, I don't golf with other people to find out how good I am against somebody else. I golf because it's competitive against myself. Like, it's a very internal thing for me. And running's the same way. It was all an internal game for me. Can I meet my goals? Can I accomplish this? And so, yeah, I had a goal. And as a matter of fact, I was so into the whole goal thing that I created my own chart. I think Jeff's got a picture of the.
So Jeff, did you have a time goal when you ran too?
This one. Before we dive into this on Jerry's, I was such a naive runner. I not only didn't have a goal, I didn't really train. At the time, I figured I was playing enough basketball.
Oh yeah.
And I was playing like daily.
Like
hours.
6 days a week.
Yes. So like I thought I was doing enough to really like do it. Now I learned very quickly that day that you need to train.
Well, you were in better shape than 99% of society, but you weren't in marathon shape.
I wasn't in marathon shape at all. So when you say like, did I have a goal? My goal was to appease the person I was going with.
And not appease, impress.
I was naive enough to believe that what I was doing on a day-to-day basis in my normal life was enough to do this, and I was very, very wrong.
Now, I've never been a runner. I did for college football to train a little bit, but we did like a 12-minute run, which is 1.75 miles, and it was more. It wasn't a distance, anything. I don't think I think one time in my life I have run what would be the equivalent of a 5K, but it wasn't actually. But I tell people this, and I say it in a joking tone, but I'm serious. When I am running, all I can think of is how much better I'll feel if I just stop. Doesn't that cross a runner's mind at all?
Well, well, here's the deal about that, and the whole running walking thing. If you're running, walking hurts.
Yeah.
Stopping to walk and catch your breath and drink and all of that stuff, it hurts. You want to get your breath back and you want to get your body moving again. You don't want to stop.
I don't know if you were the same way, Jared, but there was a lot of times where for me, like I literally I didn't want to slow down because I knew if I slowed down, that was the beginning of the
It would be like laying down on the couch. I'm going to sleep.
For me personally, that's what it was like.
Yeah, it was all about not stopping. And I didn't see these people who were stopping to eat or stopping to drink or stopping to the bathroom. And I'm thinking to myself, man, to mentally get yourself back on the road, back doing that was hard. Now I want to say I talk about
right one up here, dude.
yeah, and we'll go to the other one in a second. But I was going to say now I say I started running 6 weeks ago. I've been walking since July of last year. I've got over 3 million steps in the last 9 months or whatever. I mean, it wasn't like my body wasn't acclimated to the duration of the workout. It was the actual running part, and running scared me because in the past I've always had a terrible time with shin splints, and I don't know about anybody else out there, but like that's the worst pain. That shin splints just suck, and I didn't want to do that. And this time around, I don't know. I haven't had any problem with shin splints.
I got to run, but so I will leave it to you two. But I will offer this service before I go. I want to do this publicly. When you two are adding new things to your bucket list, if you would like me to proof it with you so you don't do anything stupid like run a marathon, I would be happy to talk you out of anything like this moronic.
No, we appreciate it.
I just don't get it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take it all with a grain of salt, but we appreciate that.
Yes. Okay. That's it. I got to run.
Thanks for stopping by.
Do you need me to adjust the
You can
microphone?
you can bring that over for me. All right. So, Jerry, I'm going to pull up the prediction you had here, and then just kind of, I was looking at it, and I think I kind of grasped it, but go ahead and walk me through it.
So the chart you're looking at is the mileage and the elevation chart for Pittsburgh, and I knew early on that any time that I made up, I was going to have to make up in the first 10.5 miles. Okay. So you see where the light gray starts to go up, and my first vertical line is on there. That's where the hill started, right?
Okay.
I knew in that first section there that I was going to have to make up any time. So I had an 11:45 pace goal during that time, and it was interesting. I have an app on my phone called Strava, and that's what I use to time everything. And it's got a voice, and she tells me what my every half mile and what my pace is. And I thought I hit the button at the start of the race, and it turns out I didn't.
Okay.
So I didn't get that started until a half mile in, and then I hit it, and I was good after that. But I knew I was under 12-minute pacing in that first 10 miles. But like I said, I had only decided that I was only wanting to actually run the first 4 miles. I ended up running the first 10.5.
Okay.
I had one water station that I walked through, but it wasn't very long at all.
Okay.
The rest of the 10.5 miles I was running until the base of that first hill. I pretty much ran the entire race. Now, a couple other things. The first 4.5 miles, it was inch an hour deluge. It was raining like you'd not believe, and it had been raining for 45 minutes before we even started, and then started. But I made my prediction based on what I felt I could accomplish in each one of those segments. And if you look at the end, my end prediction was a best case scenario was 5 hours and 32 minutes.
Okay.
And I think you've got the screen of what my actual time was.
Yeah. Is this the guy right
No,
here?
nope.
This
the next-
one right
that
here.
one.
Okay.
So I was actually 5:37:41. So I was 5 minutes and 41 seconds off of what I thought my pace would be,
Okay.
which is a whopping 13 seconds a mile.
Okay.
Which I took as being pretty good for my first marathon, and pretty good for the weather conditions. One of the things you couldn't do is you couldn't run down the hills. It was too slick. So you spent your whole time, hoping not to tumble or fall or wreck. So that was a real that was a challenge. But I think for the conditions that it was, mostly rainy, wet course, kind of cold, I was pretty happy. Actually, I was pretty overjoyed with my end time being so close to what I had thought. And they set you up and they let you go based on your expected finish time.
Okay.
So I was in the very last group. And when I got to they called them corrals. When I got to the corral where I was supposed to be, I kind of stood at the 13-minute a mile marker.
Okay.
And I was waiting. They normally have pacers, and there was a pace, so it was supposed to be a 13-minute a mile pacer, and they never came over. But one of the interesting things is all of these many nonprofit organizations have running teams, and one of the organizations that was there was the American Cancer Society, and they had a running team that and a pacer for a 5 hour and 30-minute marathon time.
Okay.
And essentially that person's job is to run a 5 hour and 30-minute marathon.
Yep.
so that you can finish it in that time and have the encouragement you need. Well, they were in my corral.
Okay.
And mentally I knew I couldn't run that pace in the first 10 and a half miles and actually succeed.
Okay.
I needed to make up as much time or bank as much time as I could in that 10 and a half miles.
Okay.
So in the back of my mind, I let those guys behind me, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, as long as those guys are behind me, as long as they don't pass me, that sign does not go by me, I got a shot at making my time. Then about mile 18, they went by me.
Okay.
And I said that the guy literally ran right by my left shoulder. And I said to him, as I realized who it was, and as he went by, I said, "Man, I was trying to keep you behind me." And he looked over his shoulder and he's like, "Just run with us." And I was walking at that point. And I thought, okay. But I hadn't been walking enough to really get all of my breath back. I wasn't quite ready to start again. And I started, and my gait was kind of funny and wonky. And so I just stopped. But I could keep them kind of visually in front of me. And I did for another 3 miles or so, probably mile 21 when they were finally gone. But it was interesting. Had I thought more about it, I probably would have tried to figure out how to run with a pacer and then pick up the right pacer to get me to where I wanted to go. But it was a lot of fun.
So a couple of things I just jotted down here as you were speaking, because like there's so many things that come back to me after, because it's been a solid decade. It was 2014, so it's been 8 years now since I had done it. But one of the things that people had said to me going into it, you're exactly right. You have, from the jump, you have to go because it's like you're jazzed up, and so you have to take advantage of the fact that like you have that kind of like and extra energy, because you're just not going to have it like halfway through.
Yeah, well, they talk about hitting the wall, and that's absolutely what happens. And here was my night before. So we drove into Pittsburgh on Saturday. My first marathon, I wasn't with anybody per se. You've got to go to the convention center. You got to get your bib. You got to get all your stuff. And so all of that was kind of one of those nerve-wracking things. You got to drive in, the place is packed. You got to find parking. So I get all my stuff. We head to my buddy's apartment, which was like northeast Pittsburgh. We get there, we kind of get settled. It's early evening, go eat my last meal because I knew I wanted to not eat 12 hours before the race started. I don't do athletics well with a full stomach. So I'd eaten around 7 o'clock, and we get back to the back to the apartment, and it dawns on me, like, I don't know where we're parking tomorrow morning.
Okay.
I don't know where to drop off. And so I start doing some research and start reading some things. And people are like, yeah, if you can Uber in or take a taxi in or get a friend to drive you in. I'm like, can't do any of that. Got to drive myself in. And they said, look at the parking app. So I did the Pittsburgh parking app, and I start looking at parking places downtown and kind of finding where I want to go. And then I read on the information for runners that the city starts shutting down the center city streets at 5:30.
Okay.
So if you want to guarantee that you park downtown by the race, you had to be in the city by 5:30,
Okay.
which meant we had to leave by 5 o'clock, which meant
Right.
I set my alarm for 4:30, except for the fact that I woke up at 2:30 and never went back to sleep. So by the time I got to my corral and everything, we got into the city, we got found a parking space, which was 2 blocks from staging area. I get to my staging area, it's 5:30. I've already been up since 2:30.
Right.
I haven't eaten anything since 7 o'clock the night before. And now I have 2 more hours, actually 2 hours and 15 minutes to wait before we even started running.
Right.
So it was a long morning by the time we took our first step, and we got rained on the whole time.
So I had a friend in college, because when I was getting ready to do it, I wasn't training, but I was calling people that had done it before and kind of just like mentally checking in, like, what should I expect? How am I going to feel? All that stuff. One of them was a cross country runner in college, and they gave a great analogy that I remember to this day. And they said the beginning of it is almost like skydiving. And what they said is, like, you're not going to be able to sleep the night before. You're going to wake up in the morning and you're going to have all this pent up energy that you can't do anything with. And then you go, and then all of a sudden the race is going to start, and all of a sudden nothing matters.
Yeah.
So all this tension releases and you're just running. And they go, it's exactly like skydiving. Like there's all this built up energy, and then they go, you're out of the plane. And once you're out of the plane, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so that was exactly how they described it. And I'll never forget, like, we were probably like a mile or two in, and I just started chuckling to myself because I was like, he was exactly right.
It's interesting because it was my first, like, this was my 9th total race ever.
Mm-hmm.
This was race number 9.
Okay.
And of course, I'd never raced with, thousands of people. There were about probably 13,000 that ran the half, and then 2,700 that ran the full. The first 10 miles of the course was exactly the same. The half marathoners turned off the bridge at 10.5 miles, and we went a different direction. But for 10 miles, we were all together.
Yeah.
So it was not only like running a street race, it was running a street race while avoiding an obstacle course, while also avoiding, all of those laminated road markers, not the painted on lines, but the laminated ones, right? They are slick as snot in water, man. And so, like, you don't want to step on them. So the first time you slip, then all of a sudden you're thinking, well, I got to look down. I got to avoid those things.
Right.
So you're trying to avoid those things. You're trying to avoid the people next to you. You're trying to make some progress, right? It is really, it was mentally challenging up until mile 10, because you're constantly thinking about all this other stuff, and you were never really in an environment to just kind of cruise a little bit, just kind of put your head down and put a couple miles in and not think about it.
Right.
So the first 10 miles were super challenging because I was navigating things that I didn't really understand, or I didn't understand a lot of the protocol and the way other marathon runners do things, right? Hand signs and all kinds of, I just had no idea what was going on. Like I was just, I want to go, right? And then the second half of the race, when there was less runners around you, you drop from 13,000, now you're down to 16,000, down to 3,000. Now it's a little bit easier to navigate, right?
Sure.
And that was interesting. The other thing that I learned, I was really afraid to eat while I was running, and I had done some training, and during my training trying to eat. because everybody said you especially in the second half, you've got an energy let down, and you're going to need to take some food on and whatnot.
Right.
And there's energy gummies, and I had taken 1 pack with me, and I should have had more. And I got out to the second half of the race, and because of the rest of the, we were so far behind, I was so far behind that the majority of everybody had gone in front. So there was less things at aid stations and less food. And so I didn't quite eat as much as I should have. And looking back, that probably would have helped me a little bit, get me through some of that time. But that was a really good lesson for the next time, for sure.
Oh, definitely. So you said one of the things that we did have in common, though, you said it rained at the beginning. Is that what you said?
It rained the first 4.5 miles.
Okay.
It poured, and then we had about 45 minutes on the backside that it rained pretty hard.
Okay.
But the course was wet the whole
time.
day. Yeah.
We were in the same boat in Philadelphia too, so that was interesting. Here's my proposal. I think the next time you come on, I think we should do like a State of the Union on social, because I think you and I've had some decent conversation. We had a big conversation about Twitter when all of that just happened. Yeah. Obviously, you have thoughts on TikTok. I think it'd just be interesting to dive back in. I also too, like, you and I haven't really talked about the metaverse yet. Like, you and I haven't really had like a metaverse discussion, so that might be interesting to have as well.
Cool, we can do that.
So so let's do that the next time you come on. And maybe next time we'll just kick Mark off right from the beginning.
I don't have any problem with that. Don't tell him.
That's the only downside to Mark leaving, though, is you don't get to talk about the Yankees now. That's the only downside.
That's okay.
That's all right. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. We're going to be announcing the Mother's Day, the mother of NCPA winner, here very, very shortly. Thank you to everybody that filled out the form and nominated their mother for a chance to win. So we'll be coming out with that for Mother's Day very soon. Anything else? What are we forgetting? I give Mark one last chance to pitch anything or say anything. He usually blows it, but I figured I'd throw the same thing for you.
No, I'm good. It was a good time. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Jerry Frear. We will see you guys all next week.